Yeah. No,
Amazing.
I appreciate it. Like, I mean, I love that you invited me, and yeah, always up for talking about important things. So yeah, however that happens, it's all good.
Thank you so much. Okay, so now I will let you take the floor, and I might, if it's okay with you, I might put this on YouTube, if that's okay with you, but you'll let me know.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's start. So for those of us that don't know who you are, can you just tell us a few things about yourself and how long you've been living this lifestyle and what you do and how you do it?
Oh, okay. Well, I am a dude. I am Eli Martyr. That's my name. And with in terms of my health practice and health journey, I've been vegan plant based for a whole number of years, 8 years or so, and then I made a transition into what I do now, which is essentially a fruit centered diet. It's a raw food, 100% raw food diet, and almost exclusively fruit. Vegetables, nuts, and seeds are included in the diet as options. I just don't choose them very often. And so, what's interesting with myself is that I still retain a very high level of fitness and acrobatics. I'm a stuntman as well. I'm a professional stuntman. And so I've always been involved in physical activity, martial arts, parkour, all that kind of stuff. And so with the diet as restrictive, quote unquote restrictive, not really restrictive, but conventionally speaking, being physically active, doing all the things that everybody likes to do in the health community, in the fitness community. uh, Technically what I'm doing and what many other people are also doing with a diet of raw foods is supposedly not sufficient. And so it's interesting that I've still been able to maintain a very healthy and exciting fitness oriented life while eating almost 100% fruit. So I've been doing that now for almost 8 years. And yeah, and it's been great. I mean, I've noticed lots of improvements in my health, and things just kind of keep evolving and growing for me. So that's a little bit about my background.
Amazing. For those of you that are joining late, Eli just gave us the secrets to life, to his muscles, to everything that you ever want to know, but you missed it. Yeah, Shy. Yeah, Nicole. Yeah,
Gotta
well,
be early, guys. Gotta be on
that's what you
time.
get for
Come
being
on.
late. Thank you, Eli, for your time, and I will see you soon. I will see you in the next episode. Okay, no. So Eli, now I really wanted you to be here because you are not only a practitioner, but you also study health too, which is rare, to have somebody who's like studying it and living it, right? So, and I can see you're living it by your results. So I really wanted to get your opinion and everything you know about blood tests. It's a big controversy in the raw vegan movement. Some people are really for all the tests, the microbiome test, the blood test, constantly checking the numbers. And I
Right.
feel like you have definitely have an amazing opinion on this, and you've studied it. And I'm really excited to hear what you think about blood tests. And so, thank you for being here. And take it away. Should we get a blood test?
Yeah, no problem, no problem. Okay, so uh, I guess before we start, just kind of orient and put the cards on the table. So what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to be disparaging or maligning of the act of going and getting a blood test, right? So that isn't what I'm going to do, and it would be probably silly of me to do that because getting a blood test can be a really important tool. It's a tool, right? It's an important tool that can give us some clues as to what is happening on the inside, okay? Or at least for providing some raw data as to what you can see. How data is interpreted is another thing. But yeah, in terms of getting a blood test, yeah, it can be a very important tool, especially now, right? Especially now in the modern era, yeah, where essentially nobody knows how to eat and live. Everybody's confused, right? nobody knows how to actually eat in line with their physiological gifts, right? Their physiological endowments. And so, yeah, it would be even more necessary now. See, the more we stray from our natural tendencies, the more things that we have to do to compensate for that. Yeah. And so, that being said, definitely it's more important now than it might have been at some other time where we were living in greater harmony with our relationship to food and honoring what our bodies tell us about that relationship. So anyway, should you get blood work done? I can't answer that. That's we're all adults. That's for you to decide. You can get blood work done. You can make these decisions on your own. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to purport to give medical advice here on your platform, just for safety reasons. So just have to say that. What I do want to do though is I wouldn't mind giving my opinion on some of the implications of getting blood work done when you go and decide to go and do it. So that is something that we can get into a little bit, all right? But whether to do it or not, this is your call. Right? So I think what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to reintroduce into the public mind a lost reverence, okay, a lost reverence for the human body and for its precious fluids. A reverence that we might have had and taken as common sense thousands upon thousands of years ago. Okay. And my interest in health is it's approaching the vital sciences from the perspective that the physical manifestation of everything, of your body, let's just take the human body. Physical manifestation of a body is just a fraction of a gradation of life force levels that spans higher and higher and higher. I want to rephrase that. I think what I want to say is that the human body, okay, let me rephrase that. The physical body is the lowest gradation of a life force that spans many gradations above it. Okay, I think that's a better way to say it. And if we're talking about that class of, or that type of training that allows us to use things like non-physical sight, spiritual vision that you might have found way back in antiquity, where the adept priest class would have been able to make these assessments. What they would see is that when we regard the human form, okay, we see the human form as just exactly what I mentioned earlier. It's the plane of effects playing out from a set of life forces that are operating in a grander scale. So if this is the entirety of reality, then our physical universe, our physical manifestations are only a fraction. And so in the Western world, we've kind of been overcome by a very left-brained, reductionist, break apart a thing into a million pieces and examine only the little piece and think that we can get an idea of what the whole constitutes, right? That's our current modality of thinking. And so when we examine physical phenomena, we're only examining the plane of effects and we ignore the causality that goes on in the majority. So anyway, that's the perspective that is really interested. Okay, just wanted to give you an idea of the type of where I'm coming from. And it starts to become very interesting because as you peruse this body of information, what happens is the amount of reverence that you have for the body and its intelligence and how it's constituted, it starts to ramp up. Okay, and this is something I think we've lost over time. So let's talk about a little bit about blood, just basic, basic elements here. The human body has around 4.5 to 6 liters of blood at any given time. Conventionally speaking, the blood is carrying what? Nutrients, gases, it's carrying energies. I would add it's carrying energies to the various tissues and to the various organs. Okay, so that's what we can assess physically with the blood. So when we're talking about blood tests and having your blood drawn, we're essentially talking about some sort of blood loss, okay? Some sort of loss of blood in whatever quantities. When we lose blood, we all know that if you lose enough blood, you die. Okay, that's not revelation for anybody. And we have different categories of shock that you can go into if you lose a certain amount of blood. We have compensated hemorrhagic shock that you could go into if you lose enough blood. Decompensated, these terms, compensated just means that your body is able to account for, it's able to adjust for the amount of blood loss. And decompensated pretty much just means that your body starts to get injured as a result of the blood loss. Okay, so the magic, we're not going to go into all the different categories of types of hypovolemic shock, but just know that if your body has about 4.5 to 6 liters of blood at any given time, the first class of blood of shock would be around 750 milliliters of blood loss, okay, or about 15% of your blood volume. So if you lose 15% of your blood volume, that's when you start to have problems, okay? And it gets worse and worse and worse the more blood you lose, okay? So yeah, it's about 15% of your blood volume. If that's what you lose, you start to run into, at first, the compensated spectrum of issues and then the decompensated spectrum of issues. Now that's a big problem. Now you're looking at probably perishing at some point soon. So we don't want to do that. Okay. So we know that blood is important in that regard. So I think there are just some implications. Okay, there are just some implications that, for me personally, I feel are important. Right. One of them, implications of having blood drawn. Okay, and one of them would be quantity. So they just take too much blood in a sitting. It's an unnecessary quantity. A lot of the blood that you get drawn when you go and take a blood test, a lot of it's discarded. They don't need as much as they take, which is kind of weird because why are they taking so much? There's actually I pulled up a little article here from the Cleveland Clinic Journal of Medicine. And they were talking about anemia. They made an article and they were talking about a case of anemia where a woman had contracted anemia, well, not contracted, but she'd come down with anemia after a set of blood tests. And so they go on to say, we draw much larger volumes of blood than most testing guidelines say are necessary. One author has noticed that 50 to 60 milliliters of blood is removed for each set of tests. It goes on for a bit, and then it concludes with, yet about 3 milliliters of blood is sufficient to perform most laboratory tests, even if the tests needs to be rerun. Right, so that's from the Cleveland Clinic. The average, when you go get a blood test, the average blood vial, and there's lots of different sizes, quantities for a blood vial. So, I mean, I don't know how standard sizes are, but you'll find lots of different variances there. But around 10 milliliters, so a blood vial is going to be about 10 milliliters. And in a test, they could be taking 1, 2, 3 blood vials, right? So 30 milliliters, maybe more. It all depends on what you're going in for. Right? So there's lots of different amounts of blood that they could be taking at a given time. But generally speaking, it's more than they need. There's another little complication that I find, in my opinion, okay, besides the unnecessary quantity that they take, is the recovery time for blood donations. Now, this little blurb I pulled from the NHS website. So it's a UK NHS blood donation website, and this one is for blood donation. So you are going to be donating more blood than you would be giving if you were taking a blood test. Okay, so there's that to consider. So they're talking about blood donations here, and they go on to say male doctors need to wait a minimum of what? No, doctors. Did I say doctors? Male donors, excuse me. Male donors need to wait a minimum of 12 weeks. 12 weeks before or between whole blood donations, and female donors about 16 weeks. So why the wait? And they say, unlike white cells and platelets, it takes several weeks for all the red blood cells to be replaced. Okay, so that's from the NHS, excuse me, UK. And so we can see, obviously, that the blood takes some time to reconstitute itself. A lot of time, depending on how much you draw, obviously. There's another site I plugged away at sageanswers.com just to see what I could find. It says your body will replace the blood volume, plasma, within 48 hours. So it'll replace the volume, plasma, in 48 hours. But it will take 4 to 8 weeks for your body to completely replace the red blood cells that you donated. Okay. The average adult has 8 to 12 pints of blood. So all we're getting from that is that when you do donate blood, it takes a while to reconstitute. It's not an instantaneous thing. And for me, I guess where I get a little concerned is when we're talking about not so much the average person, healthy person, you just want to go and get your blood checked, get your blood tested and see what's happening. You do that, once a year is standard. So that doesn't concern me as much, okay? It's when we're talking about the sick and infirm, okay, the weak, people who don't have good constitution, people who are suffering from some sort of lifestyle-related disease. And then they go into the clinic and the physician is advising that they come in for routine testing. So it's routine testing that I find is a bit more concerning. Even if we're drawing less total blood per session, the habitual taking of blood is far more, and this is where I would offer this, is far more vitally taxing than we probably give respect to, right? It's a lot more vitally taxing, as we saw with the Cleveland Clinic article above, where this woman developed anemia just from taking blood tests. After you take a blood draw, they advise you no heavy lifting, no exercise, right? If you're fasted, they're going to offer you some sort of drink, orange juice or apple juice, some sort of carbohydrate, simple carbohydrate. You could feel lightheaded. They want to get electrolytes back into you. There's some protocols for if you feel symptoms after a blood draw. So why is that, right? Why is the blood so important? Why do we feel all these symptoms when we start losing blood? Okay? And not necessarily the small amount that we would have during a blood test or a blood draw, but I'm talking about just in general, when we lose blood, what is happening, right? Why is it devitalizing us like this? And it's interesting when you start to look into the esoterica, because this is where I found my interest was leading me into really understanding what's happening there. And you can you can go back into the annals of time, browse antiquity, and you can find all sorts of myths and legends and fairy tales. And you're going to find this kind of recurring common theme where there's a type of fascination with blood, right? The life force, the life essence. Why do we have this thing, this mythical concept, not mythical, but this kind of old concept of blood being necessary at some sort of sacrificial ritual, right? Where does that come from? What is that? What's happening? What is trying to be communicated when we see all these myths and legends from the past talking about blood, right? We know that we have that common theme of the demon or the devil who wants to gift you with all sorts of lavish material gifts, right? And showers you with hedonism, gives you all of your worldly desires in exchange for your blood, right? In exchange for a signature in blood. So in essence, giving the blood as a payment for these worldly pleasures that the demon or the devil is giving you, right? And it's interesting because in that sense, what is being communicated? See, if you thought that myths and legends from our past, from deep into antiquity, if you thought that these were just kind of random, fanciful, imaginative exercises by our ancestors, you would be mistaken. What that is these are all parables and stories, allegories, and what they're trying to do is it's coming from an esoteric understanding of the essence of life, right? The laws that govern life. And they're trying to communicate to you certain important elements that are good to incorporate into the life, right? And so they're trying to tell you something. So when we see this thing, like I mentioned earlier about signing in blood, right? They're trying to communicate that in a spiritual sense, almost the blood is like currency. It is deeply valued by that demon, by that devil. It's very valued, and the demon is willing to give up all sorts of lavish indulgences. And the price you pay is your life essence, your blood. So you have to pay for the indulgences, right, which are corrupting. And so it's a very interesting thing. So the equivalent of money here on the physical world would be the life essence of the blood in a more sublimated, in a more spiritual sense. And so it's that they're trying to communicate to you. And so the point is that the blood is very important, special. And I think what I want to do, because I know I don't have too much time, and I can't get into everything about the blood, but I do want to just touch on one or two things really quickly, if I can, if possible, really quickly, and then of course you can open up to questions because I know I'm a bit pressed for time. So in the esoteric literature and the esoteric kind of understanding, it's curious. We have this concept of as above, so below. All right. And I repeat that. I always go back to that. It's a hermetic principle that is telling you a truth about reality. Wherein the human body is a microcosm, is a small universe that echoes the patterns seen in the larger universe, in the macrocosm. And so they're self-similar. Right? The universe is using self-similar tools of creation to create the macrocosm and the microcosm. And so we have this sense of the higher and the lower. Kind of like if I want to do something in physical reality, I want to produce something, it has to exist in a thought world first. Has to, no exception. Has to exist in a higher world, and then it gets trickled down and translated into the lower world of action, and then something is produced. We have this sense of higher and lower realities. Your blood, the conventional understanding of blood, and it's accurate, it's all true, the conventional understandings of blood that science tells us, it's all true. And what they're telling us is that the blood receives nutrition from the outside world. Okay, so we eat, we get nutrition from the outside world, and we nourish the blood, and then the blood takes that nourishment and it distributes it to the organs and the tissues, and that's what the blood does. Okay. And in a sense, what we can see from that is that the blood is like a tablet that is written upon from the outside world. No, you know what? I won't describe it that way. I'll just say this, that the outside world is brought into the body and is deposited in the blood. Okay, let's just keep it that way. That's a bit simpler. So through your diet, through what you eat and what you breathe as well, you're taking in from the outside world information, data, nutrition into the blood, and then the blood uses that information. Okay, and as you do that, what are you doing? You create and build your physical body. Yeah, we've been doing it ever since we were kids. Now, interestingly, this principle of the higher and the lower, you can see its expression in the blood system itself. So in a curious sense, from your head down, we have what we would see as a lower system, okay? The earthly plane, the lower plane. But on the higher plane, your head, the brain, your system, the seat of the consciousness, seat of the ego, you also have a blood circulation that runs in a circuit that feeds everything up above. And when we're talking about that blood circulation, that higher blood circulation is now invested in the very same way that the lower takes nutrition from the outside world and brings it in and builds your body. In a curious sense, the higher circulation is also taking in information from the outside via the senses, by the sense data. Okay, your brain is crunching all this sensory data from your outside. And that data is also a type of nutrition that also gets fed into and imprinted into your blood. And so we have this intaking of the outside environment in a sublimated, higher energetic form, sensory data, and we also have it in a very worldly, kind of visceral, physical sense in our food. And why your blood is being tasked as being this type of medium into which nutrition from the outside world is being deposited, the reason your body is making that decision is because the blood is the actual expression, or is the instrument through which the ego operates. Okay, imagine your blood like a biological fluid saxophone. Okay, imagine your blood is like a red flowing saxophone. If you were to conceptualize your ego as a big, your higher self, okay, when I say ego, your higher self, your mental self, your consciousness, imagine that as a big pair of lips. And that big pair of lips, your ego, your consciousness, what it does is it is blowing into the instrument of your blood and playing the tune of the ego and having it expressed in the blood system. I'll say it in another way. Your blood system is a condensed version of a higher energy body that makes up you as the human being. Okay, so in your blood, that is the seat of the ego. So the life essence uses the blood to express itself. Okay. And so I want to go into a couple of details here. I'm trying to be as brief as possible.
That's okay, Eli. You can stay as long as you need to. I'm
Okay.
learning so much. I know everybody else is, so don't worry about it.
Okay.
But
In
we're
that
gonna have
case,
questions after. We have
yeah,
questions.
that's no problem. That's no problem. Let me make this addition then, because I'm trying to be brief, and I was like, okay, no, don't get into this. Let me make one addition here. Just like water just like steam might condense. Okay, steam being an airy, etheric thing, when it condenses, it becomes more physicalized. It becomes water. Okay, and so in that example, you have this immediate illustration of how the higher becomes physical. Okay, so when those adepts in the priest class of old who had innate spiritual, and not innate, but very trained spiritual discipline, okay, are able to look at someone, they're not making an assessment of a person's body, for example, by looking only at the physical body. They understand that they're observing all of the energy bodies that are causal and that create the physical. Just like in seeing steam become water, you would want to understand both properties to get a full understanding of what water is. Because if we only looked at water and examined it, you might miss the whole fact that it's becoming water from this other type of elevated substance. Yeah. Okay. Imagine your physical body as the exact same, where you have different energy bodies that make up you as a complete human being. Different gradations of bodies. So it's fun. I just uploaded a video where myself and Tony from Rawlicious, we were going into all these concepts as well. So yeah, we have these gradations of bodies whereby different elements, different aspects, of the physical body represent those higher aspects, but slowed down, condensed. So we have an etheric body and its physical manifestation. If you were somehow to condense it and slow it down, just like that steam example I gave, if you were to in some spiritual way, directed by God's law, don't ask me how to explain that. That's up to God, right? But somehow, if we're to condense that energy body, that etheric energy body, what happens is you get blood. It would be the representation on the physical of that body. Then, if you go to another gradation higher, you would have what we call our astral body, an energy body that constitutes us, and it's responsible for sensing, for internalizing, for our emotional capacity. And its form, when it's concretized, when it solidifies, would be your nervous system, right? It's a sensory thing. So on and on it goes. What I'm trying to express here is that different systems of the body are expressions of some other order of that system on a higher plane. Okay. So blood now being the concretized version of your etheric body, and your etheric or vital body is simply the first non-physical-ish body that you get beyond the physical. And you can actually see it with your own eyes. So it's like steam. You can actually see it. You have to not strain, but you have to observe in a certain way, and you can actually see it. Anyway, So the blood being the expression of that vital body, it creates a medium through which the higher self, the ego, expresses itself. So interestingly, if you were asking those, the adept priest class, the ones who can look at a person and understand these things right away. This is interesting because it would mean, and I'll get back to the blood. Okay, I will get back to the blood in terms of the blood test. Okay. So I haven't forgotten, just bear with me for 1 second. So when these people, these adepts, would regard a person, right, they would be able to tell immediately whether someone has an ego, an individualized sense of self, okay? An individualized sense of self. So when observing a plant, for example, if back then someone were to suggest to these adepts, hey, if I step on this plant, I'm trampling some individual soul, I'm crushing someone's soul, right? You guys are awful because you eat carrots and broccoli. These people would laugh at them, right? Because they don't have plants don't have red blood. And red blood in the esoteric literature and the esoteric understanding is the immediate dead giveaway that you are dealing with an organism who has some sort of internalized ego, okay? An internal life of their own. It starts to get very interesting, right? Very interesting. So coming full circle now, right? What exactly does that mean if we're talking about implications of getting blood tests? All I'm saying here is that we have to understand that there is an entire world of significance that's going on far beyond our current ability to respect. And the more you peruse this type of information, the more your respect level starts to go up for the way that the intelligent creator has created your body. Now, when we take blood, so the implications of having a blood test, what I would suggest is that we are not just losing a little bit of blood and we get tired and then you rest and then you're okay. In addition to losing the nutrition, from your blood, the oxygen, the standard things that we accept, we're also losing, because remember, the blood is also what builds the ego, right? That higher circulation is taking in sensory nutrition, and it is building your higher self much in the same way that it is building your lower self with food nutrition. So when we take away too much blood too consistently, it's devitalizing, and we rob our bodies of our ability to express life. Remember how I said that the blood was like a red fluid-like saxophone, an instrument, and your higher self is like a big mouth, an ego. Your ego is like a big mouth, and it's playing a tune. And that tune would be you, yourself, your personality, your consciousness. And it is trying to play that tune into the blood system and give life, give expression to itself. So if you were to deprive yourself of too much blood, it would almost be like sticking, I don't know, cotton balls into the end of the saxophone. And the ego is trying to express its life quality in the blood, but it can't, because there's some obstruction, or there's not enough of that medium, right? So the point is, in giving respect to the fluids of the body, we start to see that we might want to preserve them with a bit more integrity than to have this kind of indiscriminate whatever attitude to these fluids. They just, they'll just reconstitute themselves. And so if I were giving some guidelines as to how to go about getting blood tests, okay, we'll finish off with this, because I don't want to drift too long. So some concrete tips for what you should consider when you're getting a blood test. Okay. One thing to know is that it is more than likely far more devitalizing than you probably think it is. You would want to, in the week post blood draw, you would probably want to pay very, very close attention to making sure that you're not being vitally taxed in any unnecessary way. So in that week prior to the blood test, it's not the right time to do any drinking. It's not the right time to do any smoking. It's not the right time to have those late nights out. How many of us post blood draw are going to bed early every night for the next subsequent nights, right? How many of us are eating an ultra clean diet, right? No oils, no stimulants, no nonsense, right? This is the problem. Nobody does that. Nobody does these things. And so these vital taxes can weigh on you. It's more likely. I mean, this is kind of this has been observed. It's more likely that you get sick on the other side of a blood draw because your vital economy has been weakened, and it takes time to reconstitute. So in those days post blood draw, you want to be very hyper diligent as to what comes into your body. And you also want to be hyper diligent that you're not taxing yourself. It's not the time to go exercise heavily. You don't want it, not only in the first 2 days, but I would say, man, you want to give that like 3-4 days before you do any actual strenuous activity. It's just not the right time. You want to make sure that you're letting your body reconstitute itself. So that's where I think I will start to end things. And I just want to urge that there is a grand intelligence, right, that goes into the fluid makeup, the whole makeup of your body. Your blood is an extremely important component of that. That's not that that's revelation. That's obvious, but you know, we see this timeless wisdom coming at us from everywhere. The life of the flesh is in the blood. We see this. This is what we hear from the Bible. It is the blood that maketh an atonement for the soul. Atonement, right? What are we trying to communicate here? There's something very deeply valuable about the blood, and when we surrender the blood, I would submit that we may be surrendering more than just, you know, nutritive elements and some oxygen that we get tired. So I would submit that there's more to that is being lost, and the ego, the mind, the consciousness, for the time being, may have more difficulty expressing itself when the blood volume has been decreased. And so because of that, we get all the symptomology associated with the life essence being drained from the blood. So is getting your blood work dangerous? No. I mean, get your blood work tested if this is something that you'd like to do. And it can be great. Yeah, it can be a tool. We can use it to get more insight into what's happening on the inside, excuse me. And like I said before, particularly now where nobody eats and lives correctly. So we start to get into this realm where we can be doing a lot of damage and not knowing it because we do things that are not natural to our bodies. So to know that that's happening, yeah, it's great. We get some blood tests and we can get an idea of what's happening. But I would also advise that when you do that, just it's time to be hyper disciplined about making sure that you're not taxing your body after that for a good while. You know, the saunas and the ice plunges. No. This is the wrong time. Do not be doing any of that after a blood test. Pregnancy, right? Taking blood tests while pregnant. This might not be a good idea. You wouldn't want to devitalize yourself during a critical time like that. For women, taking blood tests at the wrong time of the month, this can be problematic as well. Right? There are lots of implications here, and we're always playing this energy balance And when we rob ourselves of a quantity of the most precious fluid that your body protects tooth and nail, fights tooth and nail to preserve the integrity of this fluid. And when we just give it indiscriminately, right, we have to understand that there's a price to be paid for that. And we want to have enough time to redeem the blood through good practice, through good work of the soul to reconstitute and come back to health. So, so yeah, again, like I was saying earlier, I'm not here to say don't go get blood work. I'm just saying there is a very deep body of information, of knowledge here that tends to cultivate a deep level of respect for those body fluids, which is why they would have been most highly valued and conserved, right, in the esoteric understanding. So anyway, that's it. I'll leave it at that for now. I hope that was kind of informative. If there was something new there for people that might not